everybody. Welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I'm starting the updates of a new trial today that just started. This is the trial of Jennifer Crumley. She and her husband, who is going to have a separate trial in March, are charged with involuntary manslaughter, 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. The prosecution, and this is a new theory, it's never been tested anywhere in this country, where parents are being held responsible for the actions of their child who has committed a mass murder. And I say, hurrah, it's about time. Yes. So on November 30th of 2021, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the opening statements today. That's when the shooting occurred, November 20th of 2021. The shooting was Jennifer's son, Ethan Crumley. Now, Ethan has already had his day in court. He pled guilty, so there was no trial, but there was a Miller hearing that went on for ever, where all the evidence was presented, including evidence from psychiatry and psychology, to attest to the fact that his brain is not fully developed. He was only 15, and once his brain does fully develop, he'll be redeemable. And the judge wasn't buying it. He ruled, and the only question that would occur, that this was about, was whether he would get life with the possibility of parole or life without the possibility of parole. And the judge said, because this guy, Ethan, was never showing any remorse. Never. So he got life without the possibility of parole, ×4. So before the court brings in the jury in this case, and first of all, the judge is very difficult to hear. I hope they do something about her microphone. The prosecution stands up and he says, I want to invoke the rule, and the rule of sequestration. What that is they say that nobody that's going to be a witness on either side should be in the courtroom until they've given their testimony, with the exception of the leading police officer. He always gets to sit with the prosecution. Now, Jennifer's lawyer, she looked around, she goes, I'm not aware of any witnesses that are in this courtroom. And the prosecution said, well, Megan Amirowitz is in the courtroom, and we do plan on calling her as a witness. Now, who is Megan Amirowitz? This is the woman, the girl that was tried for the death of her father. She had thrown a poison substance on him, fished it out of the trash, and just, in a fit of anger, also juvenile, threw it at him. And he had these severe burns from what was lye. That's what was in the container. And he lived for 4 months in the hospital before he passed away. Just a horrible death. So she was on trial for his murder, and she was found guilty. But during her sentencing, she had dozens of supporters, that's to say that she had done this in a fit of anger, and that she didn't realize what it was, and she was a juvenile at the time. So same thing that happened to Ethan. They had to have this Miller hearing. So in her sentencing, she read a statement to the court, and showing very much remorseful, and how she wanted what she wanted to do with her life, talking about, and she was sobbing the entire time. And her judge was very lenient. She got time served, yeah, with probation, supervision. But the person that helped her write the speech that she read at her sentencing was Jennifer Crumley. So why is the prosecution calling her as a witness? Now, he mentioned to the court this morning that she was going to testify to statements made by Jennifer Crumley. So is she now turning against Jennifer Crumley? And this makes me think back to her sentencing. Was there some kind of deal in the works back then for leniency at sentencing in exchange for testimony against Jennifer Crumley later on? Anyway, she was asked to leave the court. So, and the camera didn't focus on her at all. So the prosecution got up and started talking, and they said, this is about the deaths of Hannah St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, Justin Schilling, and Tate Meyer, who were gunned down. He said they didn't die in car accidents, um, nothing as a result of medical malpractice. They were murdered in a mass school shooting on November 30th, 2021 at Oxford High School in Michigan. And here's how he put it: they were murdered in an act of terror committed by Jennifer Crumley's 15-year-old son. Then he acknowledged, no, she didn't pull the trigger, but the evidence is going to show that she is responsible for what he did that day. He argued that Ethan Crumley was in a downward spiral that had been going on for several months before this shooting, that his mental status was deteriorating, and she knew about this. His firearm was not secured, and he shouldn't have even had it. At that age, you can't go buy a gun, but his father goes and buys the gun and gives it to him as a present, Christmas present, an early Christmas present. So the prosecution then talks about the math paper. Now, the math paper is on the morning of November, that day in November. The teacher sees that he has done this drawing on a math paper, and on the drawing is the gun and people lying in pools of blood. So she's a little bit alarmed, and she notifies the counselors and the administration of the school, and they call in Jennifer Crumley. So Jennifer and her husband go to this meeting. They respond immediately. They go to the meeting, and in what counselors or the jury's going to hear that these kinds of meetings usually last at least an hour, but this one only lasted 11 minutes. And the counselors expected that they would take their son home and make an appointment for him to get mental health counseling, but that did not happen. Also, the prosecution points out that the evidence is going to show that these Crumleys lived right down the street from Oxford High School. When they left that day, they could have stopped at the house to see where the gun was. And before they left, they could have asked their son, "What's in your backpack?" Now, the prosecution warned the jury, he says, you're going to hear that nobody at the school searched his backpack, which, that's not a good thing, but it doesn't have any bearing on her responsibility for her son. So at no time did they ask their son about the gun that day. And basically, they did nothing. 11-minute meeting, and they were out the door. So at this point, the prosecution starts to educate the jury. He says, now, Jennifer is not on trial for murder. She is on trial for involuntary manslaughter, which is gross negligence. It's in the negligence family, which means they're going to have to prove that she had some kind of legal duty over her son, Ethan Crumley, and that what he did that day was reasonably foreseeable, and that she willfully disregarded the danger. So we'll see if they can prove that. Then the defense gets up for their opening argument, and I thought what she did was brilliant because I'm a total Taylor Swift fan. She said, she paused for a long second. Pause. Because, on my way to court this morning, I was listening to Taylor Swift because I love Taylor Swift and calms me down, and I'm all amped up for the trial today, and this kind of calms me down. But I heard one of the lyrics that really resonated with me. Band-aids don't stop bullet holes. Now, I have no idea what what song that's from. Um, but she said, what the prosecution is arguing is band-aids. Wasn't going to stop what he did. Interesting. She said they're prosecuting her client to make people feel better, to, in an effort to show the community that someone is being held responsible for what Ethan did, and to send a message to gun owners. Interesting strategy. So she argued that the evidence is going to show that none of what happened was on Jennifer's radar. Nothing. There was no way to know what was going to happen that day. She said Jennifer is a very hyper vigilant mom. She said there was one time when he had a mole on his back, a 1 centimeter mole, and it started to change colors. So she took him to the urgent care center. Then the finger pointing started, which is why the trials are separate now and why they have separate attorneys. When this whole thing started, they had the same attorney, which is the one that's representing Jennifer. James now has his own set of attorneys. So it's clear to me that what they're going to do is say that, listen, he bought the gun for his son. I don't know anything about guns. I didn't have anything to do with where it was kept, how it was locked, how if Ethan had access to it. Yeah. Wasn't me. It was him. Now, the whole time that her attorney is discussing what happened, Jennifer is crying. She's not weeping, just you can see the tears are coming, and she's, quivering. And so, one of the things that the jury is going to hear is that from the prosecution is that Jennifer and her husband tried to flee, and they were stopped at their friend's art studio where they were hiding out, which is not far from the border into Canada. So this defense lawyer says they weren't hiding, they were planning to turn themselves in the next day. And the reason they took all their money out of the bank account is because they knew that the their assets could be frozen. So they needed money to get lawyers for Ethan and themselves because they knew that they were being charged. So they asked a friend if they could stay at his art studio while they figured everything out. That makes no sense. She says they weren't hiding. They would go out front in the art studio and smoke cigarettes. They're not hiding. That Saturday they had planned, as soon as the courthouse opened, they were going to turn themselves in. Then she said, my client plans to testify. I thought, ooh, this is going to be a good one. Might do that part live. So those were the opening statements. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about Jennifer's change in appearance. Oh my God. Jail has not been kind to her. Either that or the food's really good. Because, I mean, here's a picture of her before, or like right at the start of this whole thing over a year ago. Slim, physically fit, her hair's all one, she's obviously dyeing her hair to keep the grays away, and she's looking okay. Look at her now. Like, could nobody offer her a hairbrush this morning? It looks like she just took a bee's nest and put it into a ponytail at the last minute. She's gained a ton of weight. She's not looking good at all. She looks like she's aged about 20 years, maybe 30 years. Yeah, poor thing. Although I will say, I mean, I don't feel sorry for her. Yeah, I'm not going to lie about my opinion of what these parents did that day, because I'm totally against guns. So I'm just laying that out there. I'll try to be unbiased and just tell you what the evidence shows. But when it comes to guns, I don't play. I do not play. All right, so that was the opening statements. So in tomorrow's episode, I will continue the rest of the testimony from day one. So I hope you guys have a great Thursday. Don't forget, this is available as a podcast on Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, hit that thumbs up button and the notification button. Hit all so you don't miss a single episode. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.